Good afternoon. Afternoon. All right. I'm gonna wait a few minutes to see who joins us here before we get started, but okay. Well, we can at least have a little general discussion here, and then when people come on board, if we get more people here, which hopefully we will this afternoon, then we can do another round of introductions here. But so I'm familiar with Tom and Carl and Rick and Kevin. Are you first time joining our meetings here?
Have you been? I am, yes.
Yes. Okay. Rick, where are you from?
I'm from Somerset.
Oh, Somerset. All right, great. All right. And did you send me did I communicate with you by email at one point?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay, great.
I was recently designated as the Somerset Selectmen's delegate to Serpent.
Okay, excellent. Yes. Yes. All right. I remember that now. Okay. And Kevin, how about yourself?
Sorry about that. I stepped away while I was waiting for it to start. I'm the IT director for the city of Everett.
For Everett. Okay. All right. Yeah. So you've have you been on our calls before?
Yes, I have.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. All right. Great. So I know it's sometimes the afternoon meetings are a little challenging for some people. We are okay. Good. There's a few people coming on now. Brian Espinola. Welcome, Brian and Jonathan from New Bedford.
Thank you.
Okay, we're just going to give it a little bit longer to see if we get a few other people joining us. And I know at the top of the agenda I had Josh Eichen listed as joining us. He did tell me that he might be a little late getting jumping on board, so we may need to need to go to another part of the agenda beforehand. Let me see. So I forwarded some emails just to make sure people receive them. I know Tom, again, thanks for alerting me, and I forgot to copy and paste the agenda and Zoom link into the email that I sent earlier this morning. And then Tom alerted me there was nothing there in the body of the email. So hopefully you got that, everyone. And then there was a email I sent later in the day that was a couple of draft letters about one touch make ready for pole attachment. And then there was a mapping presentation on digital equity mapping. Did people see that? And Chris, are we ready to record?
You're already recording.
Already recording. Okay, great. Thanks. All right. Well, let's see.
With the attachment, so it's there.
Okay, great. Mike Solatro. Okay, so we have from Surtex. We have Mike Solitro from Surtex Broadband joining us, and Keith Novo from Westport. Okay, numbers are growing. Okay. Oh, and Josh is with us now. Hey, Josh, how you doing? All right, so we have a number of people on the call here that have been with us in past meetings, and at least one new member here. So what I'd like to do is just, I know there may be additional people joining us, but maybe we can get started in the interest of time, and especially with Josh's time, because he's only going to be with us for a little while, I believe. So we can just go through. I'm Bob Espindola from the town of Fairhaven, select board member, and the one that you usually hear from on organizing these calls. And we can just go, I'll just like to go through as the way I'm seeing people on the screen here. So Rick Pierce, go ahead and introduce yourself to the group.
Rick Pierce, I am the selectman's newly appointed representative on Serpent Board of Commissioners. And I was the chairman of the Somerset Berkeley Regional School Committee for about 12 years. And I became very interested in the prospect of connecting to the high-speed internet line that runs right through Somerset, but wasn't successful in selling the project at that point. And I'm hopeful of working on it again with the Board of Selectmen, although they're not really that up to date. I'm really trying to collect as much information as I can so I can make the presentation to them.
Okay, all right, thank you. And so in the order I see them on the screen here, Chris McClure, you just introduce yourself to the group again.
Hi, Chris McClure. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Watertown. We're working on our own digital equity survey process now, and along with the broadband, the fiber grant, and sort of the ex officio tech support for this group. So helping out with the mail list and the website, and just interested in all things broadband.
All right, thank you. And he sets up our Zoom meetings for us, so thanks again for that. And Carl Allen, Chelsea.
Good afternoon, Carl Allen. I'm a senior planner here in the Department of Housing and Community Development. And part of my remit is to implement a solution to digital equity.
Excellent, thank you, Carl. And Brian Espinola, Bedford.
Hi, yep, Brian Spinola from the City of New Bedford, Senior IT Analyst.
Right, thank you, Brian. And next I see Courtney Berg, Falmouth. Right?
Yep, Falmouth, Municipal Light Board.
All right, thank you, Courtney. And David Cole, Westport. Oh, you're on mute, David.
There we go. Okay, David Cole, Westport, just a member of the Internet Advisory Committee.
All right, thank you. And I'll get to you last, Josh, but certainly not least. Keith Novo, Westport.
Oh, great.
Yeah, hi, Keith Novo from Westport. I'm the IT director in Westport. Last year, we completed connecting up fiber to all the town buildings and town sites. And we're looking at the possibility of rolling out fiber to the community. So we're actively, running fiber loops now throughout the parts of our town, and hoping to extend that to the remainder of the town.
All right, great, thank you. And Kevin Dorgan. All right, Kevin.
Hi, yeah, I'm the IT director for the City of Everett.
All right, thank you. And Mike Solitro, did I pronounce that correctly, Mike?
Solitro, that's close enough.
Okay, thank you.
With Surtex Broadband.
Okay. And Tom Newton.
Hi, guys. Tom Newton from the town of Wilbraham. I am the current chair of the Wilbraham Broadband Advisory Committee.
Okay, and now we have a special guest joining us, Josh Eichen from Mass Broadband Institute. And as we mentioned in the in my invite here, that we would ask if he could provide an update for us what's going on in the state and at the federal level. And so take it away, Josh. You can, whatever you think is important for us to hear.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Bob.
Thank
Great
you.
to see everybody. So good to see this group. I see a lot of familiar faces that I haven't seen in a while. Carl, I'm sorry I haven't responded to your email, but I forgot to see you here today anyways. So I'll give you
There you go.
But good to see folks, Kevin, Chris, John. So for folks that I don't know, Josh Eichen, Program Manager of Partnerships at Mass Broadband Institute. I am leading and overseeing the State Digital Equity Fund, which is supporting the planning activities in Watertown, Wilbraham, and I think a few other, New Bedford, a few other communities that are participating, Fairhaven. And I'm also leading the statewide digital equity planning process and playing a supporting role in the BEAD planning and deployment process as well. So, I'll keep this really high level and I'll try to sort of like offer some guidance to you all, and also be just curious to hear like what's going on, how things are going in your different communities too. I'm very interested in the public-private partnership agenda items, so I'll try and stay on for that. So there's a lot happening at MBI. I mean, I think as many of you know, like we're sort of firing on all cylinders on all fronts. The biggest things that we are working on right now is our statewide planning efforts. So, while we're funding, municipalities to do municipal plans, we are also working through a statewide planning process under the Digital Equity Act and also under the BEAD program. So this is sort of like we are what we are. Let me back up a second. So what's confusing about this whole thing for us too is that the two federal programs are running on different timelines, unfortunately. So our statewide digital equity plan will be completed. We should have a draft out for public comment by mid-November of this year. And then we'll be doing public comment, from months of November through December. And then we'll be finalizing and submitting our final statewide plan to the NTIA in January. Simultaneously, we're working on our BEAD plan, which has two immediate components and then more later. We are working on finalizing a very high level 5-year action plan that is going to be submitted at the end of August. And that document is really like that is like at the very highest level, like how BEAD is going to end up looking. We are going to we're actually, even before we submit that, we're rolling into creating and submitting our initial proposal under BEAD, which is going to be due, I believe, at the end of December of this year. And that document does require a 30-day comment period. So the 5-year action plan is not going to go out for comment, but the initial proposal will. And the initial proposal is really the document that's important, because the initial proposal spells out the sort of process and framework by which the state is going to deploy funding. And it's also the thing that unlocks 20% of the $147 million that was allocated to the state of Massachusetts. So this is all happening in real time. So, we are chunking through process right now. Again, likely will, as I mentioned, that where we are on these timelines. And so those are the timelines that, you all should be aware of and watching, particularly when it comes to those comment periods, because that's when we're really going to want to hear from folks like yourselves regarding, how MBI, intends to support and implement. I will also say other opportunities to engage with us. So in addition to the municipal digital equity planning that we're doing, which is really focused on a local scale, how does this look like, shape up in your community? We're going to be doing a series of regional listening sessions that are going to support both the digital equity plan and the BEAD 5-year action plan. And we're going to be doing 7 across the state. We're going to be doing them in the month of September. I see a lot of folks from the South Coast here today. We are going to be doing our South Coast listening sessions going to be in Brockton, but we are also looking to do satellite locations So if you were interested in participating and doing like a satellite location, we have a ongoing relationship with the Board of Library Commissioners, where we're looking at doing like satellite listening sessions in libraries in different communities. So, you know, New Bedford, Wilbraham, Fairhaven, like if this is interesting and you want to engage on it, shoot me an email. We'd love to talk to you more about that. So the dates, I think we have finalized the Brockton listening session now for September 7th. And then I think that's the only one we have finalized, although I know we're targeting the next week for both Pittsfield and Holyoke. And I don't think that's relevant to anyone here on the call. And then are looking at our Metro Boston listening session, probably I think we're looking at the week of September 24th. Is that right? And all this, so yeah, that we're gonna do it likely the week of September 24th or the week of the 17th or 18th. And we're gonna post all this information on our Internet for All website. So if you go to, I'll post a link to it in the chat here. But if you go to our website here, where's the chat? Oh, I don't think there's a chat. Is there a chat on this Zoom?
No, we've hit this problem before.
Oh, no. All right. Well, I'll email it to Bob and Bob can email it to y'all, but you can.
Sure. Yeah, I certainly can do that.
Yeah. We'll
Chris is still on the call. I think I know. And yeah, we are recording. I guess the chat was the functionality that we had an issue with before, but
yeah.
Okay. So we'll do that.
Yep. And then, then the two other things, just a note. So the other two programs that y'all should keep an eye open for are, we're going to launch our capital project fund programs shortly. So the first one's going to launch is our Gap Networks program, which is going to be to connect unserved and underserved households across the state. So if there's like buildings or residences that literally cannot get a connection or that you believe don't get, I think we're using a 25.3, but I can confirm threshold, then those residences are eligible for Gap Network funding to connect them and get them fiber connection. And then we're also going to be launching a residential retrofit audit and upgrade program this fall. That's going to be looking, that will be sort of a multifaceted program that will help residents and households with quality of service issues. But the real upshot on it is that we're going to use much of the funding to retrofit multifamily buildings. So if there are multifamily buildings in your community that don't receive, that have issues with connectivity for whatever reason, we are likely going to be able to support rewiring and running fiber into those buildings. That program was just approved by U.S. Treasury. We're still making some tweaks to it, and we're kind of getting things rolling, but that will be after the Gap Networks program that launches. So that's really the upshot. That there's a lot happening. There's a ton kind of moving on here, and I'm happy to field a couple questions, but I'm gonna have to jump probably around 4:30, 4:45.
Okay, just quickly, I know we went through introductions. Laurel Pepin joined us after that, and Laurel, so we won't backtrack and have everyone introduced to you, but if you could just introduce yourself to the rest of the group here, if you don't mind. Laurel? Okay, not sure if she's busy with something else and we're in the background, but if you get this, if you hear us, Laurel, we're looking for you to introduce yourself to the group. So Josh, these two programs that you just mentioned on the capital side, are they're coming from funds that have already been distributed to MBI? In other words, that 50 million that came in some time ago, because it's obviously not part of the 20% that you mentioned. That's not going to be unlocked.
Those are under different funding sources. That goes U.S. Treasury Capital Project Fund. So Massachusetts was allocated 175 million under U.S. Treasury Capital Project Fund.
Okay. All right, that's great. And so these programs, people just look on your website for ways to try and apply for those funds. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make sure like I'll get you all notice when the solicitations go up. We have nothing is launched yet, so I'm just this is like just a super high level, like heads up, it's coming kind of notice. But I'll make sure that the details will be available when the solicitations are actually out the door.
Okay, so I know that you mentioned that you wanted to try and, stick through to hear, I think, an update on the public-private partnership, right? That's what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about, because I know many of you have like worked through various stages of like broadband planning and are working with different, folks.
Okay.
I will say strategically, one of the things that we are starting to really pull our minds around here at the state is, how we turn $145 million into $500 million. And I think one of the ways that we can think about doing that is through public-private partnerships. So I'm really, just very curious to hear kind of what's shaking out locally. Like, how are things looking to you all?
Yeah, so I'll give you an update on that. We've had a few meetings with a subset of this group here. The representatives on the call from Fairhaven, New Bedford, Westport, Dartmouth, and Mattapoisett. Westport in our last meeting said that they wanted to kind of go a different path. But what we had done is we talked about trying to get a request for proposals, to try and get a scope of work that we were looking for, to have proposals sent to us for a public-private partnership with a partner, that could do the financing component for us. And we were, we don't have, this group does not have a financial wherewithal. So, what we learned so we were trying to figure out how to go about this, without having access to funds to apply, and, resources in terms of municipal, procurement rules and everything. So we did have the gentleman representing us from Mattapoisett, who's not in the call today, but he's the town administrator for them. So he has some procurement capacity there, capabilities, and he offered to help us with that. But we still had, an issue with the funding. And then the city of New Bedford, we have some representatives on the call here from New Bedford, so I'm not sure if they're able to speak to this, but Sean Gross, who I'm pretty sure Josh had explained that they were already, in addition to their digital equity work, they were separately with CTC soliciting a proposal from them for work in a public-private partnership with the city of New Bedford. So he suggested that we may be able to, share in what they learned through that process, or at a minimum, maybe utilize a template of what they are going to use for their efforts in requesting. Possibly the first step would be like a request for qualifications from developers, as opposed to a proposal for a specific work scope, to try and get an idea of who is in this space that would be a suitable partner. The only issue with that we agreed to let New Bedford take the lead and try to help us get ourselves moving in this direction. However, Sean was not able to tell us how long it's going to take before they'll go through that process. So I don't know if anyone from New Bedford can comment on that, but even if you can, I would be interested in Josh in a response on whether there's some funding mechanism that might help us get over this hurdle, from a procurement standpoint, and trying to analyze an appropriate partner. But so first, I don't know, Jonathan or Brian, if either one of you has anything on that front that you can share.
Yeah, I can give a little synopsis on it. So the city of Bedford did go out to bid. They went through an RFP process to try to solicit more of like you said, private partner relationship with some sort of consulting group. There wasn't too many people that bid on it. There was 3 companies. One wasn't really what we were looking for, and then there was 2 that were pretty competitive. But we ended up in the end, based off of a couple of criterias and the way that the RFP process works, we ended up going with CTC. So as all of you know, we are working with CTC on the digital equity side that was given through a grant through the Mass Broadband Institute. So in addition to that, we're going to contract with them separately to do more of the make ready plans and looking at bringing in another provider of some sort, public-private relationship, seeing how that would work. The bid has just been approved, so they actually know that they're working on it. So we're just waiting at this point for them to provide all the materials back. In the RFP, just from a timeline perspective, they were looking at a little bit over a year process. So they think it's going to be a pretty long process to get through all of the steps and all the stuff that requires us to get either some sort of idea of what we can do to bring broadband to the city. But yeah, they're looking at between 12 months and 16 months, I believe. But that is started now.
Are you all still working with Entry Point?
We are not. We did get the proposal from them, not a proposal, but a an actual design kind of initial digital equity thing, but we're mostly working with CTC now.
Got it.
So Jonathan, on that, in that scope of work, they're not a financial partner. They would be helping you determine who a suitable financial partners are to work with from, okay.
Right.
That process. Okay.
Yeah, and the idea of us going kind of on both sides of it is obviously with the digital equity, we're kind of looking at that might help us get some of the funding to provide for the actual plan that we're working with. I believe we're using APA funding to kind of help with the second piece of this from the city's perspective.
Okay, so yeah, so I think Josh, that our group that got together to discuss the public-private partnership opportunity was looking to do something that basically looks like what New Bedford is doing with the resources that they have, but we don't, as I mentioned, we're kind of at a loss for how to fund it as a group here, because we're not set up. This group is not set up to have financial capacity. So right now we're if there's anything that you can recommend to us as a group on how to coordinate this, to try and help us get over that hurdle as this group, as opposed to this group just waiting for New Bedford and then following that lead.
Yeah. Let me think about it. Well, so unfortunately, like MBI, we're not funding that type of work right now. I mean, we don't have money out the door or available to do what it sounds like y'all are trying to do, which is sort of more technical financial modeling, broadband planning type stuff. I wonder about like ways to get like leverage, like community compact, efficiency regionalization grant, possibly.
Yeah, that's
particularly because if this is regional, like I feel like again, like Serped, I would really try to work with Serped as much as possible on this.
Yeah, that's
at least in terms of just not them doing the work necessarily, but trying to just herding the cats and applying for the programming, through different sources.
Well, they do have technical expertise in procurement as well. So there's an opportunity there even if and communities do have technical service hours that I'm not sure all communities utilize, are aware that they, either through the select board or the planning board, they have, I believe it's 40 hours each.
Yeah.
Or 20 hours each for a total of 40 that can be available for special projects. And perhaps if this group was to pull, the towns that are in this partnership discussion were able to utilize, some of those technical service hours, it wouldn't be a cost per se. We'll just be utilizing those hours.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I'm just like freestyling a little bit, thinking on top of my head. I'll just say from like a federal funding perspective, I think the things that your communities should really try to get your heads around immediately or try to understand is, are there buildings in your community that are unserved right now? So you can do that by, you can look at our map, our web map has, to the best of our knowledge, the 12,000 or so buildings that, and I'll share a link with Bob after this too, that we think are unserved. So that's one side. And then identifying those buildings that you think are underserved. And, you know, so this is going to be a really important point, is like qualifying locations as underserved, as in don't get 120 reliable service. If you can prove that buildings don't get reliable service at 120, then, and it's I don't want to, I can't make any like sort of like definitive statements here, but I would say that's an important thing for you to understand about your community. I would say the other important thing for y'all to be looking at right now are the documents related to the BEAD initial proposal and challenge process. There are a number of like these modules. And again, I'm gonna be really clear, MBI is, we have not made any decisions about which of these we're gonna adopt, but I think it'll be important for you to understand that they exist. There are a number of modules that NTIA has like made available that include one about like a bulk multi-dwelling unit module that would basically allow like a bulk challenge for all MDUs in any given geography, a speed test module that would allow a location to be challenged on the basis of speed tests, and a few other ones. I would say those are ones that y'all really want to be thinking about right now. You know, how it relates to public-private partnerships, like, you know, working with CTC to, you know, really start this out, I think is a good idea. And this is going to be, you know, this project, we're on like the beginning of like a 5-year journey, really, I think here. So I would reiterate, like, getting a grip on served and unserved is going to be like really important really soon, because that's going to be the most immediate locations that get federal funding, at least.
All right.
Then beyond that, thinking about ways to how you leverage those locations for other things, like, you know, and again, something that we're thinking about, like, you know, if we go past buildings, can we connect them, you know, even if they're technically served, things we're still thinking about.
Yes, and sorry, I didn't want to preempt your conclusion of your comments there, Josh, but I know you're aware of this, but we had a SERPED meeting last night, and I'm one of the commissioners in SERPED, and this is one of the things that was presented there. They received a grant from SERPED, received a grant from MBI to do some asset mapping. So I think that kind of hits some of what you're talking about, Josh, if I'm not mistaken, and they're looking in July and August to kick this off, and they'll be working on it through the remainder of the year, I guess. But they're, you know, they're going to be
it's a little bit different. So that's our money. So the asset mapping that SERPED's doing is more on the digital equity programming side. So that's really to inform the digital equity plan. Like, are there literacy courses, tech refurbishment, you know, public spaces that have Wi-Fi? Like, that's the kind of stuff that's going in through the asset mapping. Not so much. So, you know, I think like as you're working, because I know a number of communities are like working with the consultants that we're funding, like that within their scope are things like identifying those locations and helping you think through like speed tests. And, you know, we've made a ton of data available to those consulting groups. So I'd say work with them to like get that information cataloged. And if your community is not already doing a plan, I highly recommend enrolling in the municipal digital equity planning program for those reasons.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And so they, CTC is also working with Fairhaven, and that hasn't really gotten off the ground yet because they've had some contractual issues with the state trying to get everything finalized there.
I know, we're not easy, but I think that is moving forward. I think we should be inking that one soon. So
okay, so that's good. And the other thing that may come into play, or the other opportunity that may come into play to assist that for maybe some of the communities that are not yet working with a consultant is the fellowship opportunity, right? So we have a fellow that we received that grant for as well. And we've been, I know that we've been trying to recruit someone locally for that position. SERPED is going to be managing the position out of their office. But that person has a broad range of potential work scope areas that they can work under, and it's to be determined yet what they're actually going to be doing. And it's going to depend on which communities step forward and say they'd like to take advantage of this within the SERPED region. And you know, working with the candidate that becomes the fellow to see, you know, to shape, design what their tasks are going to be for the 12-month period. But they're scheduled to go to have someone on board and then have that person actually attend training in August timeframe. So it's right around the corner that person should be on board and you know, in the latter part of the year be available. So I guess there's potential to, you know, utilize them for some of what you're describing too, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anybody have any questions for Josh on this or, you know, anything he's talked about so far? Because I think he's just going to be with us a few more minutes.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Josh, you talked about leveraging the you know, certain buildings that are unserved. Like, so let's say you identify those buildings within the community, and then you build a network to serve all those buildings. My understanding is a lot of those funds can't be used to build extra capacity to pick up people along the way. We're constructing a network 550 miles right now in southern Vermont, and we're just going to the strictly unserved. The whole grant was just that. We can't connect anybody along the way.
Yeah.
So I mean, how's that going to work? Because I mean, that's what really scales this. That's what really makes it worth it, is, you know, getting the base and being able to get the network funded. And it's the best. It's the best situation if those buildings are all scattered through town. You get the most network built. But then how do you?
Yeah.
What's the plan to leverage that? Because my understanding is you can't get, you'd have to apply for another round of grants to get funding for the underserved.
So I suppose it all depends. Yeah, I don't know how Vermont's structuring their, I'm assuming that's their capital project fund.
Well, yeah, it is, but my understanding is that's kind of like a federal thing. That's the way the money flows. Like, you can't get that. They're not going to let you connect people along the way.
So I think, again, it depends on who's paying for it, how the incentives work out. And so I think, I'm not going to speak definitively here, but I think there is a scenario that we've, like, you know, talked about hypothetically, which is like, so look, I'll tell you, Massachusetts is going to be a lot different than Vermont. Our context is like, you're going to build a 550-mile thing in Vermont. That's nowhere near what's going to happen in Massachusetts. You know, most of the things that are going to happen here are like line extensions, you know, likely, right? Because we're 98% served. So it really is picking up the last couple locations. So
who serves them?
Sorry?
Who serves them then? I mean, it has to be an incumbent, somebody that's there already is going to serve them.
Right.
It's a line extension that they do, so they're probably going to apply for the grant.
That's probably likely, yeah. But I think, like, again, hypothetically, right, you know, like thinking just out loud, hypothetically, if there was a financial incentive to incentivize any provider to do something like serve a building, right? Like, would we consider, you know, called a co-benefit of passing another building in our evaluation criteria? So again, I'm not going to talk definitively because we don't have anything at the door, but that's something that we're talking about.
I mean, you take most of the southeast coast, like the New Bedford is kind of on the line there, but all of Cape Cod has one provider. That's not really considered unserved. It's considered underserved.
There's going to be households along Cape Cod that are certainly unserved.
You might get some that are unserved, but to serve them, then really what drives the cost down, because that's really what this is about. It just has to be affordable. If you still got a single provider, there's no incentive for them to lower the cost for anybody.
For actually providing service.
Right. Well, you could, let's say the network gets extended. The incumbent service provider provides service. You've now built it for them, no cost to them. They're providing service, but you still have not lowered the cost for everybody to be what I would call affordable.
Right. Yeah. And I guess it's like, so, you know, one of the other things that we're thinking about too is, you know, we're sort of, and all the other state broadband offices, I'm sure you're talking to, are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
we have tiers of priorities, right? And like, how are we solving different problems with different funding sources? But I think, again, you know, to my earlier comment, I think we are looking at the nexus of some of these things. So I'm sorry I'm being opaque, but it's intentional because I really like, I can't share more information because if I did, I wouldn't want to like disqualify anybody that's on the call from participating in future grant programs. But it's just, I'm saying stuff with like conversations that we're kind of having.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, thank you. And anybody else on the call? So Courtney, go ahead.
So I'm Courtney Bird. I'm with I'm a member of the newly elected Municipal Light Board in the town of Falmouth, which is kind of across Buzzards Bay from Bob. And we're also at a point now where we've done feasibility studies that say it's feasible, and we've done engineering studies. And so we're at the next step. The cost of building out a network that serves and reaches all 24,000 households and businesses, multifamily buildings and so on in Falmouth is estimated around 50 million to 55 million. A goal of this network and the people who are behind it, including Falmouth Net, which I was the president of, was to make sure that every person, regardless of income, would have access to the network and would get service equivalent to the base service offered, whatever that was. Say a gigabit symmetrical for somewhere around $70 a month, which was an estimate. We now that we are created the Municipal Light Board, and in May through an election, of course, inevitably we're focused on getting organized, but we're doing two things. One, we are about to submit a proposal for a digital equity grant, so you'll be seeing that come down the pike in the next, hopefully next couple of weeks. And the other thing is we're about to issue an RFI to see if there are potential partners, private partners that would be interested in partnering with the town. And this gets to a kind of a regional approach because on the Cape, as you're aware, there's a middle mile nonprofit network, Open Cape. And not only do they serve the Cape, but also the area of New Bedford and all the way over to Providence, up toward Boston. And they are also engaged in discussions with private partners who have also talked to us in building out a network that gets the fiber to home. So there's a lot of moving parts right now in this thing. And obviously the key in our mind is funding. It seems, I don't mean to be cynical, but I think when the funds were initially envisioned at the federal level, the idea was to encourage the development of alternatives to the big telecoms and so forth. And the big telecoms descended on Congress, and what emerged has essentially, I think, made it, in my view, more difficult for municipal networks to get funding. It's not that it's not available, it's just that the criteria are difficult. What is truly underserved and all of that. You know that stuff. It's all about the definitions, because the way the definitions are and how they're interpreted means the whole difference between getting funding to build a network or not. So with that said, I mean, do you envision through mass broadband or other funding sources or programs, do you envision money ultimately becoming available to help in the construction of these networks?
Yeah,
I mean, other than you're funding a lot of studies, you're funding things like digital equity, which is extremely important to assess, who is really in need. So I don't dispute the worthiness of that for a moment. I'm just saying in the long run, you can't have a digital equity program if you can't find the money to build a network.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you an unsatisfactory answer, and then there's something to think about. So the unsatisfactory answer is that we are going to be following the requirements of the federal government in terms of how we're deploying the funding. And, you know, when we talk about BEAD in particular, it's, you know, serve the unserved, serve the underserved, make sure community anchor institutions have a gigabit connection, and then you can sort of look at other opportunities. So we're going to be following that. That's the hierarchy that we have to follow. Here's the thing to think about. And it's complicated, but it's about putting the pieces together.
Right.
So I mentioned earlier, right? Like multifamily buildings, thinking about where your unserved locations are, where your underserved locations are. I would say, you know, from where I'm sitting, I think the most effective, this is me just talking, I think the most effective way that, you know, communities like yours are going to get to the thing that you want, which is like that municipal fiber network, is by doing it in chunks. You know, I think like, don't think about a $50 million price tag up front. That doesn't seem feasible right now. But I'd say if you can narrow in on parts of a community, particularly high need parts of a community, like really like lower income census tracts, areas again that have like, you know, high density affordable housing, public housing, I think you could foresee ways to be creative and put pieces of infrastructure together.
I think you're probably right. You know, it'd be nice if there was a big blob of money, but you're right. You've got to kind of, the dilemma is in towns, the population is spread out.
You got to parlay it.
There may be an underserved house here and another mile down the road,
right,
another underserved house, and in between there's 10 others.
Right. But if you're smart and you think, and you know where those locations are, you know, and you think about the routes that you're going to be looking at, you can think about ways, again, like who are you going past? If you're going past it, like, is there, you know, private equity partner that might want to kick in a little bit, you know, get to that next house, especially if you're already going past it. So I think it's really, you know, the thing I would just encourage everyone to do is like, I know everyone's got the big eyes on the big price tag, but I think the moment calls for being really targeted in where to focus the energy on first. And I think like building that like momentum from there, that's the way that it's all going to come together. You know what I mean? Because if you can, you know, if Falmouth has an MLP, that's awesome. Like, way to go. You know, you've taken a step that most communities don't go for. So, and if that's the way the town wants to move, you know, there's like, I mean, there's just stuff is so complicated and the financial risk is real too. So, you know, I'd be super cognizant of that, but I would really think about moving small chunks and like build it out incrementally. And don't think about how you're gonna do it all at once. That'd be my recommendation. And I might leave you there with that today because I have to run.
Okay.
But it's a pleasure. Bob, I'll make sure you get links to the websites I mentioned. And keep you posted on where this group is meeting next. I'm always happy to pop in.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Josh. We really do appreciate it. All right.
Bye.
All right. Thanks. So I'd like to just step back and say, Laurel Pepin, if you can hear me on this call here, we the rest of the group, if you'd like to introduce yourself to us.
I can speak for Laurel. She just texted me. She's with me. She's with our company, and her volume, her speaker isn't working. Her volume or mic, whatever it is, so she can't. She can't respond. She hears you, but she can't respond. So she texted me earlier.
Oh, okay, no problem. At least we know she's with you and she's represented. So, so you know, I'd like to just, you know, hearing. Now, I did send a message actually through to Jonathan asking if he could send, if New Bedford might be able to share the RFP that they wrote that that CTC responded to and was awarded for their work, just so that, you know, maybe the rest of the group can consider whether that's something that we want to try and, you know, replicate. But also, Courtney, if you could, we didn't lose Courtney, did we?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I'm sorry, looking around the screen here for you. So what you said piqued my interest as well, because it sounds like you're in the process of going out. And I know in the past, you've mentioned that Falmouth has already received multiple proposals from financial partners to consider a public-private partnership, right? So it sounds like you're getting a little more formal with that process now.
Yeah, I mean, we've had informal conversations over the last 4 or 5 years with a variety of private ISPs, and most of them, you know, are what they're telling us is that in the end they have to look at a set of numbers that make sense. And if I think it would be very difficult for Falmouth alone to find a partner, but I think if we look at it and what we're hearing and our conversations all sort of fall around the idea that of a more regional approach. While we're a little bit further down the road than a lot of the other towns on the Cape, you know, that having the other towns in the Cape be involved in the construction of this in one form or another is going to be critical to its success. And I think we're fortunate in that we have Open Cape, which provides the backbone, which also, of course, runs through New Bedford. All of the towns you guys are, you know, it serves your area as well. And so,
right, that's interesting that you mentioned that. And you know, we could I guess consider at least with the smaller group that's been working on this, you know, discussing with Open Cape what they're proposing, you know, to you. I assume that they're talking about not being the financial backer for the entire construction, but bringing in a financing
right.
partner. Okay.
Yeah. I got a phone call. Let me kill this.
Okay. You go ahead and jump onto that. I don't know if you know, if anybody has to, you know, jump off the call at 5 o'clock or anything like that, we could, you know, the Zoom meeting is open. We can continue on. But if anyone thinks they need to leave at 5 o'clock, if you could let me know. I just want to a couple.
Yeah, but Bob, maybe now I killed the phone. So so I think looking down the road, I think the more towns and the larger the area in which some kind of a cooperative effort that includes Open Cape, because they're critical of their infrastructure, goes through there. Mike knows all that. And I think the more attractive that's going to be for a private investor. So I would think down the road, it would make sense for more engagement between, in other words, not necessarily look at the Bourne and Sagamore bridges as a divide, but rather just a, you know, there's an unfortunate mentality that develops around the Cape Cod Canal. And it's like, it's a foreign country, depending on which side you are going the other way. And,
right, yeah. That's what occurred to me. As you're saying that, because you know, I know it does. Open Cape runs down Route 6, and I'm sorry. Who was just speaking there? I missed some. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it goes through all the towns that you're engaged with, and then it goes on into Rhode Island, and they're extending their trunk line down into Aquidneck and that area down near Newport. So,
okay,
you know, and that's Providence, and I believe Boston, or at least Braintree, is one of their connection points with the rest of the web.
Well, I think, you know, what we ought to do is the group that was talking about, and there was a small, you know, smaller subset of this group, that we should regroup together and talk about these new developments that we're hearing here, and perhaps after we get some more information from New Bedford. But maybe with the interest in the interest of time, what we have else to cover on the agenda, given some of the people here might not be interested in the public-private partnership discussion. I'd like to share one of the other things that we talked about in our last meeting, and I'm going to share my screen here. Can everyone see this letter here to Senator Michael J. Barrett?
I see it.
You cannot?
I can.
Okay, it might take a second to open up on your screen, but this was when we talked last, we had GoNetSpeed had mentioned that they were doing work on a couple of bills here, the House and the Senate, to try and urge an act to establish standards for pole attachment, the pole attachment process to facilitate construction of broadband networks. And that was going to, many other states have this, and that adopting it would help take one of the hurdles that projects have to go through, and especially from a timeline perspective, and shorten the length of time that it takes to get through the make ready process dramatically. So it seemed like there was some interest in trying to send, on behalf of this group, a letter to those listed parties here. These people listed in the bottom here are all names that came to us, including the addressee from Heidi Mahoney, who was in our last meeting from GoNetSpeed. She explained this to us. So I took a draft that she sent and basically edited it to just say that this is from members of the Massachusetts Broadband Coalition, who are writing to urge passing of this this act to establish a pole attachment process, and OTMR, I think it's defined as adopting one touch make ready, OTMR. So I just wanted to see if, at least for the people on this call, there was an interest in trying to send something like this. I figured it has to be addressed from somebody, so I have my name on here. And I've written it as on behalf of the Massachusetts Broadband Coalition. So if people don't, like the idea of sending this in, I won't. There's one here that's for the Senate, and there's another one that's identical, except for who it's addressed to, that's written to the House of Representatives. So just like to get some comments from people on whether you think I should, send this out or not, or if you think it should be written differently, if you'd like to take time to review it and then, consider it another meeting. Any thoughts?
I can't see why any town wouldn't want to do this. I mean, in Wilbraham, if we ever get to build our network, we'd like to go exclusively underground, which isn't feasible. But even at that, I'd still think it's, worth sending out to both the House and the Senate, and I can't see why any town wouldn't want to be included in it, but that's me. So just want to give you feedback. I think it's great.
Thank you, Tom. That's the way I look at it too. I mean, I don't really see a downside here, but certainly open to any other comments here.
We've already reached out to Sue Moran on this as well, to tell her to support it. Sue Moran represents Falmouth and Plymouth.
Okay, all right. So then the Falmouth.
She's a senator, state senator.
Yeah, okay, great. Anybody else have a comment on it?
So I think it's great, Bob. Do you know any sense of the probability that this would actually get enacted by the legislature?
I don't myself have a sense. Yeah, really. I don't know. Who might lobby against it.
Conceptually, it's worth supporting, but I suspect, Verizon, EverSource, NGrid will view this as a huge hurdle that's going to cost the ratepayers money, and fight it. But
I can answer that question. I don't think it does any of that, because I also wrote to them this same style letter to both the House and the Senate to support the bill. I mean, keep in mind, Maine has it, Connecticut has it, wherever sources in Connecticut, New Hampshire has it, Vermont has it. So it doesn't cost the ratepayers anything. What it does is it takes out the time to go out and do the work. So you can have a qualified contractor go out and move the communications cables. Eversource is still going to move their electrical cables. That doesn't get done under this act. They're separate and apart. But I can tell you from my experience, Eversource and the electric companies aren't the problem. It's the communication companies that have to get each of their own companies to slide the cables down. It's inefficient. It costs money, which the person that's applying, the third party attacher, in the case this would be the municipal, would be paying that cost. So do you pay the cost to have one crew to go out and slide all the cables down, or do you pay 3 crews to go out each different, each at different times to mope to the same pole? And then it takes time to do that. So it's not, the ratepayers don't pay for this. It's the third party attacher that ends up paying that extra cost. So it's more efficient. It goes, time to market is cut down. That's why GoNetspeed is interested in it. Time to market is cut down. And that's really the issue. But I don't see why they wouldn't support this. But I'm not a politician. I don't know what they're thinking up there in Boston.
Yeah, it's, and the thing when I look at it is, if it was first of its kind in the country, they might say, well, but it's where this has really been adopted in a number of other places, and it seems to be working. I just don't know if they would have
I mean, you're still going to make the application process. You're still going to go through that process, but it comes down to once the make ready estimate is prepared, are they going to have enough crews to support us? And that was the issue all in Western Massachusetts and the Berkshires. We built 17 towns out there, and it wasn't really until the governor's office got involved with it to push that along to get Eversource and Verizon to move a little bit quicker. But that is always the problem. You can't get on the poles. And in Massachusetts, unlike Connecticut, they don't have a temporary attachment law. So in Connecticut, once you get the make ready estimate back, you can apply for a temporary attachment, and that's granted usually within a week. So you could go and then do a temporary attachment, and that you could be on that pole temporary for a decade. But you're going to have to incur that cost at some point, but it doesn't hold up the project. But that's only in Connecticut. I don't see that elsewhere, and I know Massachusetts does not have that.
That's interesting.
And has someone done the analysis that this requires a statutory change? The DPU can't do it through regulation.
Do what? The one-touch make ready?
Yeah.
I've always seen it. It always has to pass legislation. They're not doing it through a government agency like the PUC. I don't. I get what you're saying. You would think that they could, but it seems like it has to go through legislation, and I'm sure that's by design from the incumbents. But there's no reason why it shouldn't pass. It doesn't cost them anything. Well, what it does cost them is it's going to cost competition. But Verizon's the pole owner, and the communities that we're really talking about are not communities that Verizon is serving right now. Verizon is kind of, at least in this part of the country, is out of the FiOS business, fiber to the home. They're doing wireless. They're not interested in doing the fiber deployments. Otherwise, they would have already been deploying out on Cape Cod. I mean, they're already attached there. If you think about it, they're already on the pole. They own the pole. If they really wanted to, they could just do an overlash job, very cost effective. The home, the cost per home, and they could go and compete with Comcast out there, and they're not doing that.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, Verizon did come to talk to us and ask, how much would you pay us to do that?
They ask you to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. They're not really interested in spending their capital to do that. They're focusing their capital resources elsewhere. And now it looks like they may be paying for some lead removal at some point, if you've been following that. Lead cable removals. That was in the paper the last 2 weeks.
All right, so at least I'm not hearing any objections to it.
I don't see it. It's all in positive. I mean, it can only help. but it's definitely an issue. Make ready is definitely an issue.
Okay, thanks. And so on our agenda, what we had left is.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Oh,
I just wondered why Senator Roderick's isn't on the letter.
He's on, that there are two different letters and let's see, there's one,
yeah, one went to the Senate and one went to the House.
I looked at the Senate letter and I didn't see his name on it. Am I wrong?
I thought I saw it on there. Let me.
No, it's not on there.
Yeah,
it's not.
Let me look at the letter that, because I was given the information. Let me look at the letter that.
Yeah, Roderick should be on there. He's a very powerful senator.
Yes, and he represents some of the communities that are.
Yes, he does. And he's chair of the Ways and Means Committee. So
yeah.
Right, but this is going to the Joint Telecom Committee.
Yeah, well, Ways and Means has to take care of all the funding of everything. So he's a key guy.
He's very approachable too. So I think if you wanted to get a handle on where it might go in the Senate, he's very, very willing to talk openly on these kinds of issues, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
A friend of the South Coast.
Yeah, right. I'm glad you said that. I'm thinking of some reason I saw Senator Mark Pacheco, and yeah, that's right. So I will add him to this. I don't know why it was.
Are you looking to just send it to the people who are on that specific committee? Because I know there's some like senators and representatives from New Bedford that aren't on here, but are you just looking at that committee or?
Well, this is the list that was sent as recommended to us to copy. So, but that doesn't mean we can't copy other people. I'd be glad to hear, if anybody has a list that you want to send over, I can, that you think is the best, list to copy.
What might be more appropriate, this is kind of geared to the committee that will write the or mark it up, but it's very useful to write to all of the senators that you have a relationship with, asking them to co-sponsor the legislation. Because when I looked, where I've lost
it's in the joint. I have the letter that I had sent, and that was the recommended list. That other person, Roderick, is not on there because the letter was addressed to Senator Barrett. He's the chairman of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. And
right. So
it was copy that sits on that committee.
Yeah, on the Senate side, the bill was filed by Senator Gomez out of Western Mass, and at present he has no co-sponsors.
And he's not listed as being copied here.
Yeah, he's not, because he's not in that committee. That's what it is.
Okay.
It just went to the. I don't know. I just knew that this was the committee, so that's who I addressed the letter to, just like you did.
Well, what I'll do is we'll send these letters off as is, and then do some research on, who we should target for receiving this same letter, but as kind of, in asking for their consideration and co-sponsoring it. I don't know if there's a timing element to that where they have to do that by, a certain date, or if that's already passed, because whatever the situation is, I guess, I'd like to at least get something out since this was been on hold since our last meeting. So I'd like to just get these two letters out, and then maybe, right, if it wouldn't be a problem to just do it that way, right? We can then follow up with copying other people. So
agreed.
Okay. All right. So let me take another look at the agenda. So we had an item to share information about digital equity work ongoing in various communities. So I think we touched on that in to some extent. Does anybody want to add anything on that with what's going on in your local communities? No.
Just a quick comment, Bob. I was able to get that RFP over to you that the city used. So if it's public record, so whatever you want to take a look at it, let me know if you have any questions about.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Again, I'll send it to the group that's been working on this, but also Courtney, I can send it to you if you're interested.
Yeah.
Seeing what they're doing, and maybe if you have an RFP that Falmouth put together and you can share that with us, that would really be helpful.
Yeah, we are, what we're issuing is an RFI, not an RFP yet.
Yeah,
we
that's what
may issue an RFP depending on where these conversations go. The other thing I should note is that there's a very similar group, and I think this has been mentioned before, that's assembled by the Cape Cod Tech Council and meets periodically about once a month to discuss the very same identical issues that are being discussed here, only focused on the Cape. And it seems like it's a duplication of effort in some respects. And, some point or another, maybe, Bob, we should talk offline and see if we can coordinate some of this.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, I think you even provided a contact for me in the past, and I forwarded our information to them, and even a meeting date. This was a couple of months ago now, but if you have someone you'd recommend that we reach out to, and if we can merge these two groups in some way, or at least share information.
Right. Or just hold joint meetings where you. Yeah.
Right. That would be, I think, welcome opportunity to learn what they're doing. Okay. And so the other item on the agenda was to discuss questions or concerns with the AG's office should they join our next meeting. I sent a request through their website to try and see if they could join us for this meeting, and I didn't actually get any response, so a little discouraged by not even having an acknowledgement there. But I can by all means try again. I'd really like to see if they'd be willing to join us and have that candid conversation about antitrust laws, et cetera. And when I mentioned in the email to invite Josh Eichen to this, he also was very interested in what the Attorney General would have to say and wanted to participate. Certainly if she was, if a representative from the Attorney General's office was going to be joining us. So I know, Carl, you've mentioned in the past, you have a contact there. I mean, if it's something that you can, put a plug in for through your contact.
Yes, I'll reach out to her.
That would be great. I mean, it'd be really nice if we could, get them on our agenda for August timeframe. I think that would really be, helpful. Kind of.
Do we have an August date set?
We can be flexible. We have been somewhat flexible. We've kind of been in this time range towards the end of the month. Lately, it's been Thursdays, but what we could do is, I think if we have someone as important as the Attorney General with a really major topic, we could see what their availability is, hopefully later in the day, at least. Evening might not work for them, but if we can do a 4 o'clock start, and if they were to say they can only make it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, perhaps, we could just poll the group and see, but.
Okay, I'll reach out to Emily and see what the feasibility is.
All right. Anybody on the call have any, concerns about what I just said, trying to be flexible like that?
I just got to jump off for a 5:15.
Okay. All right. Today.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
No, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. I'm glad we get that in before you left. So anybody, the only other thing we have on our agenda is really to see if anyone has any other, sorry, I lost the agenda here for a second. Any other, it's like a roundtable thing. If we have any other comments or suggestions for next meeting, if the Attorney General can't join us. I mean, we talked a little bit about Open Cape as being a common thread throughout our communities. Is it, would that be helpful to invite them to a meeting to, just make sure, well, I'm saying this, but people like Tom is out in Wilbraham. There are others, Carl that just left, that's is that, you know, I tend to be more focused on what's going on in our area. Apologize for that, but you know, any other suggestions people might have about a guest for our next meeting? No? Okay. All right. Well, what I think unless anybody has anything else, we can, you know, we can look to end this one, but just one more time, I want to, yeah, throw it out there. If anybody has anything else they want to talk about tonight. No? Okay, then. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next month. Some of you might see you a little sooner on the partnership. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye now.